You think you guys would have won it?
100%. 100%. And I say this with all due respect to the Alabama winning. I think Alabama won it that year. I'm like, we would have killed you guys. Killed you.
Hello and welcome in. It is a Thursday edition of Always College Football. I'm your host, Greg McElroy, and we appreciate you being here with us today. It is January 30th, and we are going to start a new series here. Over the next 8 months, we're going to do a lot of conversations with prominent voices from the college football world, both way before some of y'all's time, current day players, coaches. We're going to try to create a weekly event that is considered appointment listening. It's going to be a Thursday conversation with somebody from college football. We're going to try to do it every week. Can't guarantee that we'll be able to do that, but we will try. I can promise you that. Today, we are going to be joined by Cardale Jones, the national championship winning quarterback from 2014 Ohio State. He, of course, I feel like is a very appropriate guest to have. He led the Buckeyes to the first 4-team college football playoff championship. He was a guy that would have been in a situation where he could have very easily transferred if the transfer portal was in existence. We'll ask him what he would have done if the transfer portal existed the way it exists now back in 2014. We'll ask him about NIL. How much could he have earned potentially after that incredible 3-game run, Big Ten championship, win over Alabama in the Sugar Bowl, and national championship victory? How would he have done financially in NIL? We'll ask him about 2015 and that team having lost just one game to Michigan State. They were left out of the college football playoff field, but I think many believe they were among, at least at the very worst, the top 2 or 3 teams in the country that year as far as talent, but they were left out. How would they have fared in a 12-team playoff? And then finally, he's probably one of the first players in the modern era that was tampered with. We'll tell you, and he'll tell you, how that went down throughout the course of his tenure. If you are new to the show, please check us out on whatever podcast platform you prefer. It can be Spotify, the Apple Podcast platform, or if you're here with us via the ESPN College Football YouTube channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe, and we very much look forward to continuing to pepper you with content here throughout the offseason because it never stops here on Always College Football. Let's dive into a great conversation with the national championship winning quarterback, Cardale Jones. We welcome him in. He's Cardale Jones, national championship winning quarterback. You can follow him on several different social media platforms. CJ12 on Twitter. I've seen him, I believe it's Cardale Jones 7 on Insta. A bunch of different places to be able to get his content. He does a phenomenal job on CBS Sports covering college football. He's also co-founder and GM of OSU NIL, the foundation. Cardale, what's going on, my friend?
What's up, man? Thanks for having me. As always, a pleasure catching up with you guys. I was looking forward to this all week. So, yeah, man, I'm ready to dive into it.
Well, it's cool, too, because, this is going to be a new thing. We're trying this. We figure, hey, we're going to start at the top. We're going to go get the biggest possible guest we can get. We might as well get a Buckeye, fresh off a championship. You brought in the championship in 2014 in the 14 playoff. Now, why not get a Buckeye right off the heels of a 12-team championship? So it just made sense to start with you. We good with this?
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Like I said before, thanks for having me. As you guys can see, I'm still on cloud 9 with my Buckeye gear. I'm usually decked out in Buckeye gear of something, but today I got the hat, I got the freaking shirt, I got some sweats on with a Buckeye leaf, and when I leave the house, I'm pretty sure I got a hoodie in the car or something like that. So I'm still on cloud 9. This year was so magical as a fan, as a supporter, and definitely having an impact in NIL because you had a chance to see on the back end of things of how it all ties together. And then also being a 10-year anniversary of the 2014 national championship team. This was like the perfect 10-year anniversary gift for the Buckeyes to win another championship. So I'm still on cloud 9.
No, I think you should be. I think it's totally appropriate. We're happy for y'all, that's for sure. It was a great game, great season, a great bounce back. We want to start with you, though, and this is kind of the genesis of our conversation. You and I, you played a little later than I did, but we played in just a completely different era than they're playing in now. But we kind of want to talk about where the sport's at now, where the sport was back then. But before we get to all that, I want to start with you as a kid. You grew up in Cleveland, right?
Yeah.
So answer me this. You grow up in Alabama. You have to pick, all right, Bama or Auburn. You grow up in Texas. You better have an allegiance, whether it's Texas,
Yeah.
A&M, OU, Texas Tech, whatever. You better have an allegiance. In Ohio State, do you have a choice?
You know what? You know what? You'll be surprised. Yeah, I think in this day and age, I think when I was coming up watching in my community, Glenville community, where we had so many great Buckeyes that was from our neighborhood, Ted Ginn Jr., Dante Whitner, um, Troy Smith, and the list goes on. Big B, Baron Brownie, and it was almost like it was written on the wall for you to go there. But we had some outliers. We had some guys that go to the team up north, right? Michigan. We had Pierre Woods and my senior class, one of my good buddies, Frank Clark, who went to the team up north. And I'm proud to say that we got him. We got the best of him over my times at Ohio State. But for the most part, it was Ohio State or nothing. Just from what our community was so indulged in and what it meant to us as just members of our community because they did so many great things under Jim Tressel that gave us so much hope, where it's not a lot of positive things that was usually happening around, our neighborhood in inner city Cleveland, not just in Cleveland, but inner cities all around the country. But we had that one Saturday to look forward to watching the Buckeyes on top of cheering for some local heroes to say.
Yeah, so kind of draw the picture for us. Like on Saturdays, you wake up. Do you watch College Game Day as a kid? Like, do you circle? Ohio State's going at noon today. Ohio State's going at 7:30 today. Like, it's kind of like a community wide event when the Buckeyes are playing where you grew up.
Basic, and then so Saturdays were big football days, period, because I play Little League football and we usually would play in the morning. I think our latest games were usually be like 12 o'clock, and that will only overlap with Ohio State if they were playing at noon. And then even with that Little League football, 8 minutes a quarter or whatever it was, we still got done so fast. We had an opportunity to catch the Ohio State football games. It was the second half or whatever it may have been, but yeah, it was kind of like a thing that was what we was going to do. We was going to do our little league games. We was going to watch Ohio State whatever time they come out. Usually it was 3 o'clock back then. Not much of College Game Day. That wasn't a huge thing back then for us, and how big of a production it is now. Because I was just joking about this with some old players. Just like when we grew up and played and watched, the TV deals wasn't as big. So the teams that we were really exposed to on each and every Saturday, I remember like it was yesterday. It was Ohio State, Eastern Michigan, Marshall, and then every once in a while we didn't get many Michigan games on our networks just because a lot of times in Big Ten Ohio State and Michigan probably playing at the same time. So I was never really exposed to Michigan until later on in the season, maybe if they play one of the primetime games, and of course the game at the end of the year. So it was like you was indulged in Ohio State and the schools that was really surrounding the state. And then Cincinnati was another one that I grew up a big time fan. One of my favorite players in college football history to this day still was Tony Pike.
Yeah.
Because I got a chance to watch him play so much and what he did with Marty G. And, didn't know Kelsey was that good back then, but didn't even know I was watching a future Hall of Famer as well. Well, two of them with the Kelsey brothers. So it was indulged that you was going to be somewhat Ohio football from birth.
Yeah, it's cool to think too. I've you kind of forgotten about like those Brian Kelly led Cincinnati teams. Like they were really good, man. Like
Yeah.
Pike was the man. They had a bunch of talented players, that's for sure. So when you were getting recruited, I know Ted Ginn Sr. was your coach. I mean, is it one of those situations? Hey, you don't go to Ohio State. Your backup's been practicing. Like, how do? I mean, I know you were obviously the guy, but what is it like to have a coach in high school that does have deep ties to Ohio State? His son had just played and starred at Ohio State. So what's the recruiting process like with someone that you're leaning on having such heavy involvement towards one school?
You know what, Coach Ginn, I would never say he pushed us to Ohio State. His relationship with Coach Tressel and the program at the time, he saw the bigger picture. Coach Tressel had the bigger vision as well as Coach Ginn, how he ran his Glenville Tarbloaders program as well, where it was more than about football.
Yeah.
Ohio State under Coach Tressel and under Coach Meyer as well, and I can guarantee under the leadership of Coach Day as well, it's more than about football. And Coach Trussell and Coach Ginn had hit it off on such a personal level where he felt comfortable enough to say, hey, I nurtured these kids from pretty much Little League. I knew the Ginn family knew my family. They grew up together. So, and not just my family, but so many more athletes who came through that community. Coach Ginn has personal relationships with them from, way before they even get to high school. So having their best interests at heart was just normal for him to have, and sending them and pushing them or having a relationship with a top university around the country that shared his same values, it made it easier for him to sell Ohio State. And I look at that transition. I look at the way he went about things. I look at the way Coach Trussell back in the day sold Ohio State to me. And it's the exact same way when I have an opportunity to talk to recruits throughout the NIL process. You see the top, you see the national championships, you see compete at a high level, you see the cool uniform, you see all that. But let me tell you about what you don't see. Let me tell you about how a university like this, and I can't speak for many other universities, having so many buddies who played at the National Football League and went to top universities, Georgia's, Alabama's, and Clemson's, and USC's, and all these different universities. We don't share the same stories about life after football
Yeah.
or the preparation where one university have invested in you off the field versus another. And that's what really sold me on Ohio State throughout the recruiting process, that I never felt like, oh, if I go here, I have to make it to the NFL, I have to be successful in football, or I can do nothing else in life. I understood the business community. I understood the alumni base. I understood the relationships and the networking that a place like Ohio State will offer you if you take advantage of those opportunities. So it was always not just comfortable for me to go out there and say I want to play at a high level of football, but I also want to be a proud alumni at this university as well.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And we'll get on to your story during your career here in a moment. But before we do, those first 12 months were not seamless. I mean, you get there, Jim Tressel steps down, Luke Fickell becomes the interim. So you're sitting there all throughout the year. What's being said in the locker room during the 2011 season when you guys finished 6-7? It wasn't a great year. What's being said about, hey, what's next? Like, what was going through y'all's head?
So the transition for me happened a little bit differently. I didn't actually go in 2011. I went in 2012.
Gotcha. Okay.
So our senior year, it was another top quarterback in the country in the state, a guy named Braxton Miller.
Yeah.
We both committed to Ohio State. Braxton went in early. He forgo his high school senior semester to go into school early. He got the spring ball under his belt in 2011. And then that's when I was finishing up my last semester in high school. That's when the transition happened. That's when allegations came out. That's when Coach Trussell resigned, and Braxton was going in and competing potentially for a starting spot. He played as a true freshman, and the plan was at that point was to separate me and Braxton by 2 years, even though we were the same age and the same classification coming out of high school. So I went to Fork Union Military Academy for a semester. My first semester would have been in college in 2011. I went to Fork Union, and then I re-enrolled in Ohio State in 2012. So I reclassified.
Gotcha. Beautiful.
And then my first year in 2012 was Urban's first year as well. Then I redshirted. That gave me and Braxton that 2-year separation that the original coaching staff, Coach Fickell and Coach Trussell, them put in place for me personally. Coach Trussell was always a guy of keeping guys in Ohio, keeping his guys in Ohio. If Coach Trussell could have justified recruiting just Ohio kids, he would have did it. I look at I look at the team pictures, and this is no knock on just the new dynamic of college football. I look at the team pictures. We always do a big team picture, and then we do a team picture of just guys from Ohio. And it used to be 45, 50, 60 guys in that one picture of the 100 guys just from Ohio. And now you look at it, I don't even think they do it anymore because it's not impressive how many guys you have in Ohio, from Ohio, at Ohio State. They do such a great job of recruiting all around the country. But Coach Trussell was big on keeping his guys in Ohio, and that was his plan for me personally to ultimately stay here, because clearly when the quarterback get to play, if we going in the same year, whoever beats who out, it's a great chance the other one's going to transfer.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I wanted to get to this next point. Now there's no limitations. Like, you could transfer and you don't have to miss a snap. Like, you can be out and then starting the next day at whatever place you went. You go into 2014, you're sitting there going into camp as the number 3 quarterback. Braxton gets hurt. They end up going with JT, which makes you the backup throughout the year. So if the transfer rules were in place going into 2014, would you have been a Buckeye, or would you have potentially thought about going elsewhere because you were third on the depth chart going into that season?
So that season was such a whirlwind. I think you have to rewind it back to the way we ended the season the previous year in the loss in the Orange Bowl. Braxton Miller, he gets hurt. And one thing I've known over my 2 years at that time in Ohio State is that we put our quarterbacks in at a lot of risk with the type of offense we run, made him susceptible to hits, and definitely just type of player he is. Period. He's dynamic with the ball in his hands, no matter what. And he ended up tearing his labrum versus Clemson in the Orange Bowl. He got to get surgery. And my goal was always to be the number two. So going into that season, me and JT Barrett was fighting for the number two spot. Our backup, Kenny Guyton, who's now the quarterback coach at Wisconsin, with Luke Fickell. He was a phenomenal player and one of the best backups, I think, in college football history. And he could have definitely been. I think that's a great question for him because he had showed at one point in time he had the school record for passing yards and touchdowns. So he had showed at a high level that he can start at any university around the country. So that's why I say he's the best backup ever. But anyways, we knew he was gone. We knew if you cracked that number two spot at Ohio State, you had a chance to play. Just because, we put our quarterbacks at a lot of risk. So that was my focus going into that offseason, dating back to the loss in the Orange Bowl earlier that year. Throughout the spring, to my knowledge, I won the backup spot. I beat JT out. We go into fall. I'm thinking on the backup. Clearly, Braxton recovered from his surgery. This is our guy. This is a Heisman Trophy front runner. He's going to be our starter. I'm happy I got the backup spot. I know I got to stay ready because of the type of offense we run. I had no clue we was battling for the backup spot again in the fall. So I don't know what conversations happened behind closed doors, and it's so funny that I mentioned this before. And I would love to get Coach Meyer's take on why he decided to open the battle back up, especially without my knowledge. Now, I'm not saying I wasn't practicing my hardest, but it's a different mindset of I'm fighting for my job versus I'm trying to prepare for the season, or I'm trying to prepare whatever my role is going to be.
Right.
Braxton goes down in practice, and I started to see it a little bit, maybe a day or two before Braxton went down in practice, that I'm like, hold on, why is JT getting some of my reps in the two group and in the one group as well? I'm just like, what's going on? But I'm like, well, whatever. Like, whoever made the best man, compete. Every day look different. And Braxton goes down. Now we're fighting for the starting spot, just overnight. So I'm just like, okay, here we go. And I always personally felt that I was never Coach Meyer's guy because, he walked into the facility with me being thrust in his lap as a quarterback. He had a chance to physically recruit JT Barrett, build a relationship with him, and see what he can do and see what he loved to do. I don't know if people notice we're two different size humans, and he's more fit to what Coach Meyer ultimately want to do on the offensive side of the ball. So personally, I felt like I had the leg back, or he had the leg up on me in that situation. So going to that season, but to get to your point, as our mindsets, and this, our mindsets was so different back then. People always ask that question: what if the portal was a thing back then? What you would do? I'm like, no, because transferring was so forbidden. It was such a bad thing. Like, it's like, oh wait, you transferring? Ugh, what's wrong with you? Like, you don't want to compete, you don't want to fight it out, you can't beat that guy, you don't want to work harder. That was our mentality as players back then. And then even with that, I'm like, I'm here for my teammates, I'm here for my brothers, whatever my role is. I know it's important enough to help this team win. So even if the portal was a thing back then, I still don't think I would have transferred.
Yeah, it's amazing too. I mean, I think you are maybe the best example of a guy that shouldn't transfer, or why a guy shouldn't. Like, you never know when your number is going to be called. Like, you never know when it's, hey, bring in the righty, let's go. Like, sure enough, exactly. You get your number called against Wisconsin, y'all roll. And then you get an opportunity to go to the playoff playing against Alabama. And at that point, Alabama had won 2 of the last 3 or 4 of the last 5 national championships, some ridiculous number. And you are a pretty heavy underdog going into that game. At what point did you know, all right, we got them? Like, hang on. Like, this team is human and we can beat this team. At what point did that start to register with you throughout the game?
You know what? I don't say it was ever a point that it was like, oh yeah, we got them, until really we won the game. But watching the film and preparing for these guys and practicing against my guys every day, at that point, it's only about to be my second start. I'm just like, I'm practicing against the best defense in the country all year on scout team. I'm not worried about no defense in the country, period. But having a chance to really dissect these guys, they were an unbelievable team, big, fast, strong, and they shared a lot of similarities that we have. It was like, okay, dude, we limit mistakes. This is going to be a dogfight. It was never a conversation. It was never a thought like we're going to go out here and kill these guys, or they're going to go out here and kill us, or we got to play perfect. It was like, this is the type of matchup we like. We were a big, strong, physical team. They were a big, strong, physical team. Two great head coaches. One was a hell of a defensive mindset. One was a hell of an offensive mindset type of guy. And it was just like the perfect clash of Titans at that time, where both programs were playing some of their best football in recent years. So I think it was never a point of saying we got them until really the game was over, because even when we went down by 13, I think it wasn't a panic. We wasn't like, oh my God, this is like we're scared. Like, it was none of that, because a lot of that stuff was self-inflicted. Even going in the locker room down, at that point in the game, we outgained them by over 200 yards, almost 300, close to 300 yards of total offense, and we were down. So we were shooting ourselves in the foot. It was the most calmest halftime adjustment and conversation and coaching I've ever been a part of when we were down, because it was all self-inflicted. And you got to get credit where credit is due. They were a great team and they capitalized on our mistakes. But it was like, guys, we don't make these few literally bonehead mistakes, we probably up by at least 2 scores. And everybody felt that way. The coaches didn't have to say anything.
Yeah.
The players were like, nah, screw John, I shouldn't have did that. I'm like, I got them next time. This is what we're going to do. And I think we came out in the first drive and went right down the field.
Well, I remember after watching that game, I was covering y'all. That was my first year in TV. I was covering y'all at the national championship, and y'all walked out for the national championship in Dallas, and I saw your team, and then y'all finished up your media day. Out came Oregon. I'm like, oh boy, this is gonna be ugly. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just being honest. Like, and there was no disrespect to Oregon. It's like, it was a different caliber of player. You could just tell.
Yeah.
Did y'all, like, when you got on the field in pregame against Oregon and you looked down to the other end, you said, hang on a second. All right, we're in good shape here. Did you ever do that as a player?
As a player, sometimes you unintentionally do that. I'm gonna be real. That wasn't one of those situations, because I thought they was a great looking team. I was mesmerized by Marcus Mariota. He just won Heisman. I'm like, I've never seen a Heisman Trophy winner in person before who's active. Like, this is pretty cool. And then Armstead and Buckner, I think the 2 stout defensive ends who still playing at an extremely high level, Pro Bowl level in the NFL. If you looked at those guys and said, okay, we got them, you completely BS them, because these guys were 6'8", 6'9", can hold the edge, can run, can bend. I'm just like, they're so much bigger in person. Now, I remember the first couple of drives, we were trying to run around these guys, and then we just said, you know what, let's just run straight at this team, right? Because they wasn't as physical on all levels as Alabama, but they was another quick and fast team. And I remember on the offensive side, what they did on offense was truly remarkable, especially with a quarterback like Mariota, and how fast they was getting the ball snap, and the things they was able to do in the run game was really impressive to me. I'm like, yeah, they can really control the clock, because I think they took the ball right down the field the first possession and scored. So, that thought of saying, like, you're looking at them just because maybe we got them on some different size level, that you say, okay, we got these guys. It didn't happen until really, I want to say, about the third quarter, when we just saw we were just wearing on these guys. We started to lean on these guys. I mean, Ezekiel Elliott had his third straight 200-plus run, 200-plus yard game, and he was at that mark in the third quarter. And you can just look on the other side of the field, not just at the players on the field, but the sideline, where they just like, oh. I remember when we converted on the 4th down. It was a quarterback sneak, but they knew it was coming. They had literally everybody in the A-gaps. It was like, I think the way they was lined up, they could have stopped the tush push. And I was just got under center, second snap under center in the whole year. And I'm just like, it's no way I'm going right in front of these guys. So I ran out on the edge, and I ended up diving over a corner to get the first down. But getting up and checking to make sure I got the first down, I'm also seeing their sideline, and they just like, oh. Like you can tell the air was just taken out of their lungs, and I'm just like, okay, I think we really got them now because it was still a pretty much a close game at that point. But I'm just like, I think we got these guys. At this point, I feel like they believe like they can't do anything to stop us, right? Because they're not expecting a quarterback sneak sweep. They wouldn't expect the quarterback sneak sweep.
Quarterback sneak sweep, not in the playbook very often. That's a good play, though. Good play. All right. Look, we know the world's changed with NIL. You're on top of the world. You just won the national championship. Zeke, Bosa, all these guys, they're all going to the show. Like you and JT are going to be in a battle going into the next year, but you have an off season. If NIL was in existence, I get this question all the time. Like, how much would you have made in NIL?
Oh my
Was
God.
there anyone bigger than Cardale Jones in Columbus, Ohio for 8 months? I mean, that was
You know what?
as big as it gets.
You know what? I laugh because there's still a few staff members on the staff from the 2014 team, and when I tell them, we laugh about that all the time, and not just myself, but just the caliber of players we had returning. I think it would have been a lot. I think I would have been able to write my own check, but the type of person I am, the type of player I always was I would have understood the limitations. I wouldn't have tried to be greedy because I would have tried to do everything in my power to make sure we keep our guys together. I'm talking about all returning 80 players together. I'm not
Yeah.
talking about just the Zeeks and the Bosa, everybody, because these guys, I feel like everybody at that point of our career of making that championship run, everybody from the walk-on kicker had a significant impact and a role on our success. So I definitely would have, been able to write my own check because one, I was the only quarterback healthy in the spring. So I would have had potentially, we just speaking in this situation of a different player, not Cardale Jones. I would have had the university in a stronghold because even if I leave, you won't be able to do spring ball.
Yeah.
You'll be doing spring ball with a gadget quarterback and a freshman quarterback who just got in, Stephen Collier, which he's more than capable enough to get things done. But you wouldn't have been able to run multiple groups of offense just because you literally did not have any of the quarterbacks on the roster. That you'd have feel comfortable with getting ready for fall camp. I mean, of course, you could have did things with walk-ons, but your next quarterbacks wasn't coming into the following year, and JT Barrett and Braxton Miller were still recovering from injury. So you wouldn't legit had a quarterback until fall. So that'd have been one example right there. Two would have been keeping me away from the NFL potentially after those 3 games. I think the mindset would have been a little bit differently, knowing that I was returning just because I was returning and I wanted to go back to school, but returning for probably a significant amount of money. And then three, the transfer portal as well. That window would have been open. I'm pretty sure teams, because they were already coming at me like, hey, you know what? They got the other 2 guys coming back. Urban recruited those guys. He never even liked you anyway. So, those little things would have started, those tricks would start playing in your head and playing in your family's head of like, you know what? Hey, Auburn, Alabama, Georgia, they got a good point. You only play because you guys got hurt. They healthy next year. So what's going to happen?
Hang on. So you might have been one of the first players ever to deal with tampering, is what you're telling me.
Honestly, I think so. I definitely think
So
so.
what are
Just
they?
being
I've
in that
always been curious about
situation.
this. Now that you're out, like people talk about tampering all the time, and now it's a little because guys have agents, and it's just different now.
Yeah.
But back in that day, how did other schools get in touch with you? How did you find out about possible? Hey, you might want to think about transferring. This is something to think about. Like, how does that process go down back then?
So that didn't happen for me until actually, I was saying if this new era was back then, right? Because you had that portal window right after the game. You didn't have that, right? Because you didn't even you had 2 days after the national championship game to declare for the NFL draft or not. That's what really, I wouldn't say screwed me, but it put things in a bind of making sure I was leaning more towards coming back to school.
Yeah.
That was the first year of CFP. The season was pushed back by roughly 10 days. Usually the season was done on the first or the second of the year. And then you had about a week or so to put your name out there for the draft, see what you're going to do, and then see if you're going to declare or go back. Well, I had, 40 hours to determine that from the post-game press conference the next morning to saying I was going to come back or declare for the NFL draft. So not a lot of time to really think about it. The tampering for me personally happened at the end of the year when a few of our coaches got major coaching jobs, and we just had conversations about hey, things didn't go the way you guys wanted in 15. He was ultimately benched. Clearly, you got the talent. You got another year eligibility. You saw what I did with guys like, I guess it's not, it's 10 years ago. You saw what I did with guys like Cam Newton, right? So clearly that was Auburn. That's my zone. And then a few other coaches around the country, like, would you transfer? Like, we have a place for you? You'd be the starter. We ain't talking about no battle. We bring you in the spring and we're getting you ready for the fall, period. And I was still I personally didn't want to leave Ohio State yet. I was declaring for the draft as a guy who didn't go the way it went. So it was strictly off what someone will hopefully see in me and potentially say he can be a guy with some development. But I knew I didn't want to sit another year. I knew sitting another year, JT Barrett was back. I wouldn't say I wasn't going to have a fair shot, but I wasn't going to have a real opportunity to be the guy again. So instead of tarnishing what I did at Ohio State, I'm like, I might as well just go for the NFL. And I go back to the point I mentioned about school like Ohio State. Clearly, NFL was the goal, but saying that a backup quarterback is declaring for the draft and is that making headlines and where he's going to get drafted, I really wasn't so much pressed on, I want to get drafted extremely high and have a 15 plus year career because place of Ohio State, they really prepared me for the real world as well. So I was ready if this dream was going to end after draft, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, whatever it was, I was going to be ready to transition.
Yeah, well, it ended up working out. I do want to ask you about that 15 team a little bit because I think that 15 team is maybe the best example of a team that could have, maybe would have won the national championship in 2015 if a 12-team playoff were in existence. So walk me through that year if you could and tell me how the current version of the postseason would have allowed y'all an opportunity to maybe find your bearings.
Man, 15. Even dating back to the coaching staff, 15 was our year that they planned for us to win it. The guys that we had in that program, the Bosa's, the Zeke's, the Mike Thomas's, the front five and the front seven on defense and the back end, they were all experienced guys, 2-3 year starters at that point. So we were like, okay, it's a veteran team, veteran leadership, veterans at all the key positions, and who played a lot of football, who's extremely good at football as well. This was going to be the year. And I think it started off bad for the very beginning, outside of going up to Virginia Tech and getting some redemption. But, trying to run a two-quarterback system on offense really stagnated our offense and made us underachievers. You got two quarterbacks, myself and JT Barrett, who are completely different quarterbacks in their own respectable playing style. You can get a lot of more things done on the ground with JT than myself. Let's call a spade a spade. I love to push the ball downfield, right? We had the guys to do that. But it's hard to do that when you can't get a rhythm. So trying to do some of the things we were doing on offense by trying to keep guys happy, I think was our downfall as a coaching staff and as an offense because it was hard to get a rhythm where you have completely different play styles when you try to play two different quarterbacks. It's not even close. So I think it started there, far as just the inconsistency. And then when Coach Meyer finally decided to go with JT as the starting quarterback, did I like the decision? Not at all. But did I support it? Yes. I remember like it was yesterday walking out of his office and saying, I was disappointed. But I said, hey, now I know my role. Now I know my role because all year you've been telling me I'm a starter, but I get pulled if we go 3 and out. So I never felt that comfortability and that confidence in my staff because every time I was out there, I was like, I got to be perfect or I got to make sure we score. And that's not a great way to play as any player in any sport, trying to go out there and be perfect rather than just letting the game come to you. So when he made that change, it was a huge sign of relief for me because now I officially knew my role. I prepared like a starter, but I knew I was the backup. But I knew, hey, I'm going to be ready whenever my number is called. I don't need to no longer look over my shoulder to see if he already got this guy warming up because we went 3 and out. And then you reverted back to we start playing extremely well when he decided to make a guy a starter, JT. We started looking back like Ohio State football. And then we had a slip up versus Michigan State. They beat us at home game with a field goal, which ultimately kept us at a Big Ten championship game. And back then, we have years where teams who didn't win their conference or lost in their conference championship game who make it to the 14 playoff. But back then, that was like a cardinal sin. You better not even think about that back then. But if that was a 12-team format, we definitely would have been in there, and I think it would have been a great 12-team format at that time because you had some great teams all on the outside looking in a 14 format that year who could have definitely had a chance to potentially win a national title.
You think you guys would have won it?
100%. 100%. And I say this with all due respect to the Alabama winning. I think Alabama won it that year. I'm like, we would have killed you guys. We killed you. And I'm really good friends with Reggie Ragland, man. We got drafted to Buffalo Bills together, and we laughed so much about the 14 game. I said, Reggie, oh, you're lucky we didn't catch you in 15. I said, what we did to you guys in 15, it would have set you program back. It set our program back. What we did to you guys in 15, because they went for it, and I think they beat Clemson in the national title. And Clemson, I think, you know how players are. We try to equate what would have happened. Clemson, I think, lost to Notre Dame in a slugfest in the Rain Bowl that year, and we put it on Notre Dame in the Fiesta Bowl. And we like, Clemson almost beat y'all. Notre Dame beat them. We hammered Notre Dame. We would have killed y'all. Like, you know how that stuff
Of course.
goes. But you know, that one slip up, man, it was the perfect storm for Michigan State to come into the shoe and beat us on senior night, and they ultimately go out there and win the Big Ten, but they get crushed by Alabama, I think like 31-0 in the playoffs, and then I think Alabama go on to win it.
Yeah, no, it was definitely probably as surprising an outcome as I've ever seen. Because that 15 team was about as talented as it gets. We'll get you out of here with this. Just looking at the college football playoff and the postseason moving forward. For you as a player, for you as now as an analyst for CBS Sports, are there any tweaks that you would like to see made in the postseason format?
Yeah, a little. I think you got to do a better job of rewarding the 1 through 4. The 1 through 4 has a tough stretch because they go from winning their potential conference championship to not playing again to 18 days. So I like the 12-team format. I love it actually because it gives more teams an opportunity, but the seeding has to change a little. And I think it'd be cool to get a 1 through 4 a home game versus being a home representative in a bowl site. Don't get me wrong, I love going out to the Rose Bowl and things like that. But I think they should be rewarded a little better than just the 18 days off and traveling to play at a bowl site. And you got to give them an advantage some way, somehow, because at that point they earned it, especially a team like Oregon, who was the number 1 team in the country. I would have loved to see them host a home game again and Ohio State have a chance for redemption and give them, I wouldn't say a real upper hand, but at that point of the season, they earned it. They did everything right to earn a potential home game, for their fan base and for their program. And to give them the one leg up. I think you treat it just like how the NFL does it when they give them the first bye and then that number 1 seed host a home game. And, it's not too much complaining about it because they earned it over 17 weeks. Oregon earned it over 16 weeks and all the top 4 teams. I think that would be a great wrinkle you put in there. And then also just that time period off for those guys as well would be something that need to be addressed as well. I would love to see the first playoff game, be played a few days really after the conference championship games because none of those teams are playing anyway. Yeah. So they already have that week off. And then now you have a shorter window for those conference champions, right? So now that window looks more of a traditional maybe 12 to 13, maybe 14 days off for Oregon. Just having a simple 1 week bye versus a 2.5 week bye. And now they're a little fresher to play at their best ability. Now they're not as rusty. So that'll be my only change.
Yeah, I'm great with all that, man. This has been an awesome visit. Really proud of the success that you're having at CBS. You're doing an awesome job. And everyone, you got to follow him on Twitter and on Instagram. Cardale7_. That's his Instagram. And then on Twitter, CJ1TW0. So check him out there as well. Cardale, this has been awesome, man. Great to visit with you. And congrats again on your Buckeyes bringing home another natty.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to catching up here soon in the future.
Before we leave you here today, we want to tell you about a very special production that is coming up from Omaha Productions. It's called The Buddy Way. It documents the legendary head coach of Dartmouth football, Buddy Teevens. He had a unique way of doing things, a very unique way of doing things. It is a fascinating fixture in the college football world. He tragically passed a few years back, and the college football world still mourns his passing. I was close with Buddy. Buddy organized the Manning Passing Academy and was there with us all throughout the weekend. We'd hang with him. We'd be around him. He also recruited me when he was the head coach at Stanford back in the early 2000s. So I go way back with Buddy Tevens. He's a guy that I have long admired and long respected, and we unfortunately lost him way too soon just a few years ago. He brought a lot of innovative things to the sport that we know and love, including a motorized tackling dummy, because they eliminated contact or tackling, live tackling from practice at Dartmouth a few years back. He also hired the first full-time female assistant. So he was an innovator and a guy that did a lot of wonderful things for our football community. He also had a unique way of delivering pregame speeches. Here's a tidbit from the Buddy way.
Yeah, so you can't really discern exactly what he's trying to say.
We got it. And then he just break us down and we go, yeah, and everyone's going.
And you got those motherfuckers will send a pack of see you.
I can't fully hear what he's saying, but I get where he's coming from. So I'm ready to ride behind what he said and where he's coming from.
You can check out the Buddy Way wherever you want to get it, but it is only available on ESPN Plus. So check it out. You'll enjoy it. He's a fascinating guy and a tremendous person. So very, very much appreciate that Omaha is producing some content that shines a light on a guy that has done so much for our game, and yet not enough people know about Buddy Tevens and what he was all about. That'll do it for us here at Always College Football. We continue to encourage all of you to rate the show if you could, whatever podcast platform you're on. If you could rate the show, if you can leave a review for the show, that'd be amazing as well. And more importantly, if you could just spread the word. Just spread the word to all your friends. Tell them we're talking college football on a weekly basis, multiple episodes a week, all throughout the offseason. We'll have more great guests like Cardale. He was fantastic. Really enjoyed that visit with him. We'll have more great guests like Cardale coming up, hopefully next Thursday, the Thursday after that, and the Thursday after that as well, all throughout the offseason. So keep it locked in here on the ESPN College Football YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts. For all of us here at ACF, for Mark, Jake, Jack, the other Jack, I'm Greg. We hope you have an amazing day, and remember, it's always college football. Hey guys, it's Greg McElroy. Thanks for watching Always College Football. Make sure you like, rate, and subscribe to ESPN's YouTube channel and wherever you listen to your podcasts.